I watched the rest and final amount last night of Leaving Neverland.
I can't believe you could
And
stomach it.
it was the Oprah Winfrey interview with these guys. And they're grown men today. And I keep telling you, this keeps bringing me back to my incident involving pedophilia in Little Falls. And I'll give you just a little bit of a background, but you can Google it. It's all public record. The coach who was involved is no longer allowed to teach. But they didn't want to go to trial because they didn't want to put the students through a trial, which, it is what it is. But you can look through that. The thing that bothers me today is that when you look at the threats that these two young guys are getting from people who believe Michael Jackson is just nothing but an awesome guy who cared about children, who had a young mind, who enjoyed spending his nights and evenings riding roller coasters and sleeping with young boys, that he was innocent, completely innocent. The flashbacks I was dealing with that took me back to Little Falls. And I'll just give you a quick background. I was 21 years old. I was a wrestling coach a junior high wrestling coach in Little Falls. And what I discovered is that my wrestlers were showing up late for practice every day. And, you do push-ups if you're late for practice. Finally, they're like, well, so-and-so, coach, makes us go in, and he's the reason we're late. Well, why are you going there? You have practice here at 3:15, whatever. We have to be checked. What do you mean you have to be checked? We have to be checked, and then the guys, these are junior high kids. They start giggling. Well, they're being checked for pubic hair to make sure that they're going to be okay to wrestle. These checks were going on a daily basis. So without getting into all of that, I had a decision to make, and I tried to go to the school, and I received resistance. In one case, a teacher said to me, we have to stick together. To make a long story short, I was fired from that coaching job. The coach was taken out in handcuffs, but the school rallied around him. They rallied around him and the young boy that was brave enough to come forward. He was shamed to the point where he was picked on, not just by students, but by teachers in that school district. It was the most disgusting display of horrible, this was such a flashback for me, watching this Michael Jackson thing. It was awful. To this day, it kills me to even think about it. So I was ultimately fired. I was just you're a modified coach. I wasn't a teacher. It wasn't my career. I loved doing what I was doing, but I was out and he was in. Now you fast forward a good 15, that was 1986. You fast forward a good 15 years.
20 years.
20 years. And there's still rumors of all this crap still going on. And one day, because I was the enemy, my son was in that school district. And one day, this person, despite the fact that I'd had a long conversation with the administration there, that do not ever let my son have any contact with this person.
Wait a minute.
It'll never happen. It'll never happen. He's in middle school. Your son will never. This coach is up at the high school level. Well, this coach found it in himself to be able to rearrange schedules. So he was my son's gym teacher. And on this day, he had no knowledge of the sport of wrestling. And on this day, he chose to pick my son out of a crowd after he verbally said, that's Bill Keeler's son. Picked him out of the crowd, brought him up, and taught wrestling to my son. Put him on the mat. My son was on his back, and this coach got on top of him. Ooh. That was the end. That's where things began to change. Now, what we discovered was that this behavior was this behavior. Now, my son never was violated. That was the worst that it ever got. I didn't end up in jail that day, but it was pretty darn close. And we then discovered, because there was a friend of mine who was a teacher in the school district, who is the real hero in this, in my opinion. The real hero are the kids that came forward. Those are the real heroes, because it takes a great deal of bravery. Anyway, I'll give you one example of what was going on. Have you played football?
Yeah.
You ran cross country,
yeah.
Whatever sport you were in. Don't you remember your coach coming to you and saying, okay, this afternoon we're going to do naked shower stretches? Remember those? You know where you're in the shower and you lean up against the shower head so the water's coming down. You arch your back out, sticking your groin out as far as you can, and the coach will hold you so you don't fall over. Don't you remember those stretches? Naked shower stretches?
No.
How in the world did this go on for 25 years in the city of Little Falls? How was it allowed to happen? God. And to this day, I can sit down at a restaurant in Little Falls, and there will be someone that will make a comment to me because I ruined this guy's life. Now, for that person or any of those people that still think some sort of innocence, that there's some sort of innocence with this person, okay, I want you to take the 4.5 hours, and I know it's a long time, but watch this and what goes through the mind of a child who is groomed. The family is always a kid who doesn't have a father. It's always a poor kid. There are problems in the family. It's always the perfect target. And you watch how Michael Jackson groomed these families and groomed these kids. And then watch a 32-year-old guy sitting on a stage crying because he's finally able to admit what happened, because he actually was so confused that he loved Michael Jackson. He felt good when he was being fondled by Michael Jackson, so there was such confusion in this person. And as an adult, you were able to taunt these kids and think that they were out just to get this guy. Watch the documentary. Watch the whole thing. It should be your job. And then ask God for forgiveness, because you're going to need it after you watch this.
Can I ask you a question? Because
you've never shared a lot of the details.
And that is why
us.
I couldn't sleep last night. I'm telling you, it was such a flashback. And it was just, and to this day, I'm telling you, to this day, they're like, oh, you ruined a person's life. No, I helped save some lives.
How was a life ruined that it was 25 years longer than it should have been?
It's disgraceful. I don't know what you're talking about. It's disgraceful that, but we don't understand. We don't understand why aren't these kids coming forward? Why are other kids they say were being touched? Why aren't they coming forward? Watch this documentary, and it'll give you an understanding. And then I say it again: ask for forgiveness, because you'll need it at some point. There'll be a judgment day where you're going to have to justify going after a kid. You're going to have to justify that to your maker, in my opinion.
You had said when you've kind of hinted at this, and actually we've talked off the air about this, but I don't know if you've ever gotten. I've never gotten the whole story.
This thing really, really affected me.
You said back in 1986, you go, I got escorted out of the building, or I got fired, and he left in handcuffs. But that didn't come for decades, right?
No, he did leave
Whatever
in handcuffs.
happened
then.
the first time?
No one would testify except for this one kid. And here's the sad part of this. The one boy that came forward, who I actually discovered and witnessed, I walked in on this. I walked in on it. So don't go telling me what didn't happen. It was 6 o'clock at night, a dark gymnasium in a locker room. I walked in, and out of this door came, and it was little things. It was little things like my junior high team had to set up in this old equipment room. All right, this is going to be a place where coach is going to check everybody. We literally had to move equipment out of an old equipment room with no windows, a big oak door. We put a desk in there, and that's where the students were marched in every single day to be checked for their growth. How could we allow this to even happen? I was 21 years old. I didn't even, I'm like, this, but they were so horrible to this young boy. He ended up, his family moved away, and I'm probably touching on some really tender issues for some people there in Little Falls, and I apologize for that, but the family had to leave the school district. They moved away. 1 year later, there was a fire. And that boy and his sisters and brothers died in the fire.
Oh, God.
So had they not had to move from Little Falls, that fire never would have occurred, right? I mean, it's just circumstance. And I'm having a tough time. It's not a good way to start the day. But I'm telling you, watch this documentary. It will give you an understanding, at least an open mind to why do people not come forward? Why don't they just come out and, if this person's touching you, why don't you punch him in the face? Why are you allowing that to happen? But you're dealing with a 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13-year-old. Minds are not developed. They're confused. They're trusting this person. trusting this person, enamored by this person, and you got to watch it.
They're victims.
You know, and I think about...
There's no doubt about it.
When I think about...
I'm sweating to death now. Oh, my God.
People ask, you know, how does a child allow that to happen? Why don't they fight back?
I want to punch anybody that says that.
I have to tell you, because I've actually thought that before, and even victims of domestic violence, you think to yourself, okay,
same thing.
1 + 1 = bad, so get out of there.
And why does she go back?
Right.
At the very least, be strong enough to consider. This is all I would say. At the very least, be strong enough to consider that there's something more. There's a complexity to the human brain that might be causing this thing that you don't understand. Why didn't that boy punch him in the face? Why did he allow it to happen? Why does that woman go back to that guy? Why does she allow it to happen? At the very least, be strong enough to say, there's something there that I don't understand. Yeah. So I'm really not educated enough on this topic to be able to pass judgment,
I think
because you haven't walked in those shoes.
People internalize, it's my fault, or I was whatever. But specifically talking to this situation about kids, I mean, my son is 3, and I think to myself sometimes, because he's in this mode where he's got like this little attitude, and I'm like, no. When an adult tells you to do something, you do it, right? And I'm teaching him,
which is a good lesson. However, yeah,
except for a situation like that.
I'll give you this: my kids were I did not want my son going to that school, but divorce. What happens, and I get it. The school was a good school for my son. There's no doubt. However, and the school handled the situation very well once it happened. But I got to tell you, my son was trained. He knew. We had spoken about it. It's so important, and that's not saying that just by being a good parent you're going to be able to correct things, and nothing is ever going to happen to your kid. I just think there are so many warning signs out there that as parents we should educate ourselves. And God forbid, if something feels weird, like if there's that old Joe Blow, he just likes kids. He always wants to roll around and wrestle with my son. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm not interested in your kid. He's an awesome kid.
I know what you mean, though.
But if I'm sitting there and I am completely obsessed with your child, now it might be completely innocent, but guess what? Are you better off erring on the side of caution than erring on trust?
Yeah.
Trust no one. That's how I feel. All right, I got a break. I've gone way too far on this, but and I'm sorry for it. I think this is combined with a lack of sleep, combined with the fact that 3 weeks ago I just had surgery, combined with the fact that I watched this horrible documentary that brought back so many awful memories that I just can't help myself. But maybe this documentary, maybe this conversation will prompt somebody to say, you know what? That situation that we were talking about the other day, it is a little weird. Maybe we just ought to keep an eye on things. To me, that's the safe way to go.